And the virus we use to teach about viruses is the simplest virus on Earth, and it happens to be a virus that infects bacteria. We call it a bacteriophage. It's a virus that infects bacteria. And so it's simple enough that it's very easy to use to teach how viruses work. It's basically our teaching model. When we're talking about other viruses, viruses that infect you or other animals, there's going to be differences, okay? But the basic idea is the same. The structure of a bacteriophage is kind of like a little alien lander, right? It looks like a little capsule. It's got DNA or RNA in the middle, nucleic acid in the middle. Surrounding that, it has something called a capsid, which is mostly made of protein. And then in the case of a bacteriophage, you have these little attachment legs. So you're about to draw the kind of infection cycle of this thing. If you're near the bottom of a page, I would start a new one. It's going to be sort of a four-corner drawing. All right, so basically it starts, I didn't have that yet. One second part is the capsid. It starts when the bacteriophage sticks on to its host cell. Whatever bacteria it's infecting, it clings onto it with the attachment legs, and then through this kind of almost like a spring-loaded injector, it injects its DNA or RNA into the cell. I put the writing in the middle of the cell just for space. I would recommend putting that writing underneath the cell. Once the DNA RNA is delivered into the cell, the capsid's job is done. It floats away. In the DNA chapter, when I gave you the secret decoder wheel, you learn how to use that. And I said basically that, the reason this is so big, the reason this is the secret of life is that the secret decoder wheel works for everything that's alive. Like code is code. It's not different. AUG is going to code for methionine no matter what living thing we're talking about. Well, that really comes into play here because the virus just injected some of that code. And it turns out the cell doesn't know the difference between that code and its own code. And in fact, the viral code comes with a little hanging on part of the code that says, you should do this one a lot. Like transcribe and translate this more than you do all the other stuff. And guess what the code says to make? I'll give you 3 guesses. You're only going to need 1. Guess what the viral DNA says to produce? More virus parts. Yep. And so the cell just goes, okay. I mean, that's code. I know how to use code. And it sends in its RNA polymerases and it's, all the machinery. And it's all the cell's stuff. It's like cheating. It's like it does this. The virus isn't using any of its own energy. It just put the code in there. And the cell now is going to make a bajillion virus parts. And I know, it's like, oh, that's so many parts I have to draw. But in reality, we're talking about like 1 million. So, okay. And eventually, there's so many of these things. It causes the cell to make so many virus parts that they basically fill up and burst. After they self-assemble, they fill up and burst the cell, spewing out into the environment. All of those thousands of viruses, each ready to start the cycle again. Pretty diabolical when you think about it, right? It's just injecting the code, and it's basically causing the cell to do all the rest of the stuff. It's like if someone sent us a computer virus that was basically the code for building their robot army, and then that virus took over all our factories and made them build their robot army, and then the robot army destroyed our country and moved on to other countries. Each robot capable of sending the code to a new country. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. I just made it up. But basically, the cell's spending the energy. The cell is using the raw materials to put together virus parts. All the virus did was put the DNA in there.